what exactly can you do about it? Because I'm sure lots of people want this cleared up, but the system of California is functioning on this whole complex.
Yeah, but if you look at this and you connect it to some of the other things that are true about California, you can see how it all fits together. And there's just so much of this. I mean, you look at that, then our next report, we just had a meeting about it just this morning. And as I'm speaking to you today, it hasn't been published yet, probably will have been by the time this airs, is on the SNAP program, food stamps. So California has, and look, with all these things, these programs are bigger in California than any other state because we're the biggest state with the most people. So that's a federal program. It's 100% federal money coming in, but it's 100% administered by California. Now, other states have checks in place to make sure that the money for food stamps is going to people who actually need it. Here in California, there's barely any checks at all. And so there's been, I mean, at the national level, you've seen the agriculture, it's part of the Department of Agriculture. Brooke Rollins, the agriculture secretary, pointing out that, I can't remember which state she looked at, that they found, I think, 14,000 recipients of food stamps living in luxury homes, just, or driving luxury cars, I think it was. So you've got a real, issue in California where, because of the mindset, which is, who cares? It's taxpayer money. There's just been no restraint on any of this stuff. And what it gets to is that central question, which is, how is it possible that we have the highest taxes in the country, in California, that they've doubled the budget in the last 10 years, nearly doubled, and yet we have the worst outcomes. We have the highest poverty rate in the country, in California, tied with Louisiana. We have the highest unemployment rate of all 50 states. The school results are a disaster. Homelessness, a disaster. We have about 11%, just over 10% of the country's population, nearly 50% of America's homeless population. On and on. In all of these areas, we're just performing really, really badly, and yet we're spending huge amounts of money. Mm-hmm. And this starts to get at that.
Mm-hmm. Well, my question, though, is how it can be turned around. So if you are, and perhaps this goes back to the question right at the beginning. So let's say we get to a position where you become the governor.
Yeah.
You're still going to be facing the California state legislature, which is a sort of deep blue state. 75% of the Senate is controlled by Democrats. 75% of the assembly is controlled by Democrats. How will you take this on when you're going to be facing surely unbelievable odds? This is David versus Goliath, isn't it?
Yes, but there's a couple of things. First of all, remember what I said about the state controller. That's a really important position.
Would they have enough power to?
Well, it's the law. It's the legal power. They have the legal power. Nothing to do with the legislature.
Right.
It's vested in the state controller.
Right.
The power to audit without any kind of specific reason. Just have the power to open the books for any organization receiving state money. Just the first point. Secondly, the power to stop the money being sent by the state if there's a suspicion of improper activity. Mm-hmm. So that's very powerful.
Right.
So we got to elect that guy, Herb Morgan, with me.
Right.
And if we do, that's very powerful. In terms of the legislature, yes, you're right that they have these 2/3 majorities. I sort of think about that in a number of ways. It's not a legitimate supermajority. They've never had 75% of the vote, or even 60, nothing like that. In California, it's the result of gerrymandering. So our attitude to it needs to be in the right place. This is not the will of the people.
Well, that's a fair enough point. That it's the will of the people, but it's. But I'm just we're talking about reality, though.
No, I understand. No, let me go through in secret. I just want people to understand how I think about it.
Yeah,
we shouldn't be in awe of this supermajority, like this is some legitimate expression of the will of the people of California. It truly isn't. It's gerrymandered. It's not going to be there forever. We're going to be working very hard to break the supermajority, and we might do it this election season. So that I've been working with other, friends and colleagues in California politics. A guy called Carl DeMaio, for example, very strong campaigner. He's partly responsible for getting voter ID on the ballot this year in California, and we're talking very actively about how we can, when hopefully as the plan is, I'll be through the primary, the leading candidate in the general election for the Republican Party. And I see my job as not just my election, but helping to elect Republicans everywhere, including for the Assembly and the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's going to be a long shot, but we think we have got a chance of breaking the supermajority in one of the chambers this year. We'll try. Let's just assume for the purpose of this conversation that we don't make it, that you still have a supermajority. Well, the governor, first of all, I again, a general point before we get to the specifics. The governor election this year is the best chance we have for change in California. It gets the most attention. There's a majority for change. A majority of Californians agree. More than that, if you look at the last governor's race 4 years ago, that basic question that election people look at, which is this going to be a change election where the voters kick out the incumbents, put in someone new? They look at that question, is the state going in the right direction or the wrong direction? Right track, wrong track, it's sometimes called. 4 years ago for the last governor's race, that number, wrong track, was kind of mid to high 40s. Now it's mid to high 50s. Sometimes I've seen it over 60%.
Yeah, but the advantage...
So what I'm saying is that if you
the difference, though, now, if we're just going to talk about your run, is that Newsom isn't running. So the Democrat nominee, who, whether it's Thomas Steyer or Javier Becerra, which is likely to be one of those two, they are not going to have the Newsom. They might have the Newsom tinge, but they might not. They might be a fresh face. They might be able to distance themselves from the unpopular.
Hardly a fresh face. He's a career politician who's done nothing but be in politics in California for 36 years. But the point I wanted to make about the legislature was that my election would be a real shock to the system. They're not expecting it. They're totally arrogant. They assume this one-party rule is just going to go on forever. I think that just being elected really will start to change the dynamic in Sacramento. There are Democrats in the legislature whose voices are drowned out because of the supermajority. They don't have anyone to work with. I think that actually we will be able to make some sensible changes happen. I don't want to overstate it, but I think that you're going to have the possibility for some change, because actually what you really need to do in a lot of these areas is tighten up the rules, cut back the programs, reform the way the whole system works. So the state controller, if Herb Morgan is elected, in the short term can stop the money, open the books, do that. But actually you need to reform all these systems. Right. Now, the final point I'd make is that sometimes you can do that without the legislature, because of course the governor runs the executive branch, runs all these agencies that are administering all these things.
So you could do a decent amount of cleanup.
Very much so. And that extends way beyond this issue of fraud and spending. And it extends to regulations and energy costs and all the things we talked about before, as well as homelessness and stuff like that. But there's another point, which is that the main policy-making vehicle in California on an annual basis is the governor's budget. The budget process is initiated by the governor. You write the budget, you send it to the legislature. It's the budget is submitted in January. Then there's a process of negotiation. A revision is published in May. It's called the May Revise, and you got a couple of months to sign it off.
Yeah.
The governor also has a line item veto on the budget. Now, if they have a 2/3 majority, just to be precise, that can be overturned by a vote of the legislature if it's 2/3. But we haven't seen a vote. We haven't seen a governor's veto overturned for, I think it's 40 odd years. Maybe longer. I think it's 70, not something like a long time since a governor's veto has been overturned by the legislature. So there's actually a lot of power in the office if you know how to use it.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Winston Marshall Show. You can click here to watch the full episode, and for more clips like this one, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, be well.